Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into the world of the Japanese poet Kurihara Sadako. Her voice is just incredibly powerful. It didn't just, survive the war. It rose from those ashes, not just to mourn, but to really push back, to question things. She demands this deeper reckoning. It's quite something.
It really is. And the sources we're working with today, they're quite rich. We've got her major work, Kuroi Tamago, which means black eggs, plus later poems and some really helpful biographical notes. And it's so important to get this from the start. These aren't just poems you study. They're acts of witness, sometimes direct reporting from hell, really, and acts of resistance against forgetting.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to really try and understand how she used her words, her art, to face these, well, unspeakable horrors of war. We'll look at the personal cost, sure, but also the bigger picture, the global politics. She gives this unique view on Japan after the war and, well, the universal search for peace. It's challenging stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Her life seemed kind of geared towards resistance from early on, didn't it? Her early years, they sort of hint at this rebellious streak. She met Kurihara Tadaichi when she was only 18. He was an anarchist, dropped out of middle school, and he told her their life together would be a thorny one.
Yeah, and she apparently said that was the clincher. It tells you something right there. But what's fascinating is Tadaichi's anti-war stance. It was strong even before WWII really kicked off. He wasn't just theorizing. He'd been in Shanghai, seen horrific things Japanese soldiers did, atrocities, things like soldiers desecrating the body of a female soldier, just awful.
Oh.
And he spoke out against it, got himself court-martialed for it. So that direct, ugly experience of war, plus his reading, people like Kropotkin, the anarchist philosopher, with his anti-authority ideas, it all profoundly shaped Sadako's view, too. And their early life was tough, real poverty. They lost their first son to malnutrition back in 1934.
Just unimaginable. And you can really see how those personal struggles, that loss, it feeds into her work, even the poems about her home life. Things like rivalry, love, the vow. You feel that struggle, but also this fierce commitment to her kids, to her ideals. And then there's the vine, right, where she compares herself to a weak vine needing a strong pole.
Exactly. It's this beautiful symbol, isn't it? It's partly about relying on his ideals, sure, but also finding her own strength, her own convictions to cling to. That resilience, it was clearly there from early on.
But then came Hiroshima, the event that just overshadows everything. She's 32, living only, 4 kilometers from ground zero. And she saw that bluish-white flash. She writes about it in The Day of the Atomic Bomb.
She does. And that poem, and it just throws you right into it. The immediate visceral shock. The sky going hazy like dusk in the middle of the day. Her scrambling into a trench, coming out to find her house wrecked, doors gone, ceiling collapsed.
Just chaos.
Pure chaos. And then the people. Children crying, burned. Refugees injured in ways you can't imagine. Clothes just seared onto skin. People fleeing naked in total shock. Aid stations completely overwhelmed, just full of bodies, the injured. Faces utterly transformed, she says. It's a chilling phrase, that blurring of the human form.
Yeah.
And there's that detail, isn't there? Giving a fleeing girl her own child's underpants. Such a small human act in the middle of, the apocalypse. Shows compassion endures somehow.
It's those details, those small moments that really hit home the scale of the tragedy. And then Nightmare, that poem about searching for a dead girl's body, the city ravaged, streets hot from cremations, the smell.
The stench of death. You can almost feel it reading the poem. That trauma, the sights, sounds, smells clearly never left her. It became the fuel, really, for her writing and her activism for years after. It was burned into her.
So her experience was obviously profound. But what makes her voice stand out, maybe even controversially, is that she didn't just settle into being a victim. She really took on Japan's wider role in the war, challenged that simple victim narrative.
Right, and this is such a critical point, isn't it? How does a nation deal with its past when it's both suffered and inflicted suffering? And Kurihara, especially after about 1965, she started really emphasizing Japan's role as a perpetrator, very frankly. That poem, when we say Hiroshima, it's incredibly direct. It basically says, when you talk about Hiroshima, you also have to talk about the nightmarish atrocities Japan committed, like Nanjing, like Manila.
That's blunt.
It is, and she was sharply critical of people who denied that history or people who used Hiroshima, used the bombing experience to sort of wash away Japan's guilt for its own actions. It was a radical act, really, forcing that dual confrontation, acknowledging trauma while also owning up to causing it. Not many nations manage that.
And she was very specific about who the victims were, wasn't she? It wasn't just the Japanese. She pointed out many foreigners were victims, too.
Yeah.
Mentioned the Koreans specifically. Tens of thousands, right?
Yeah, estimates are around 70,000 Koreans among the hibakusha, the survivors. Highlighting that really shows her focus was on universal humanity, not just Japanese suffering. And this connects directly to her critique of what she termed Fortress Hiroshima.
Fortress Hiroshima. What does she mean by that?
Well, she felt some monuments and the sort of official narrative in Hiroshima focused too much on Japanese victimhood, maybe even romanticizing the war effort, the holy war idea. She argued that the real Hiroshima, the true meaning of it, demanded Japan acknowledge its war guilt, acknowledging the aggression, the killing Japan did. This dual awareness, as you said, victim and victimizer, that's absolutely key to her message. It's about the whole painful truth.
So she's not just a poet documenting suffering. She's a folk-long advocate, constantly challenging authority, challenging narratives, a spirit she seemed to share with her husband, going back to his early experiences. How did she keep that fire going for so long?
Well, her critique of militarism, of state propaganda, it was fierce right from the start. Poems like War Close-Up talk about the narcotic of patriotism, the sophistry of race, how people get blinded, or the Fox's gold coins, where people become fanatic about the war, seeing their dead sons as gods, just swept up in it. And later, she didn't shy away from criticizing the emperor himself. In The Naked Emperor and His Majesty Has Donkey's Ears, she uses that Anderson fairy tale, right? Uses it brilliantly as an allegory to call out the denial about, say, nuclear weapons secretly being on Japanese soil, or the ongoing denial about war guilt. And that line, tell them, what day August 6th is? Chillingly direct. It's political protest through poetry.
And this wasn't just about Japan, right? Her concern was global. She spoke out against nuclear testing everywhere. Nevada, Semi-Pelicans, Bikini Atoll, the Gulf War, the Vietnam War. That poem, Don't Go to the USA, shows that broader scope.
Absolutely, a truly global conscience, and she framed it very powerfully in her Women's Principles, Life and Peace in '85. She literally advocated to turn male principles, bullets and bombs, into female principles, life and peace. That's a radical reframing of values, isn't it? And it's a direct response, a pushback against that wartime state policy she hated, the one encouraging women to have children, just as human resources for war. She condemned that in respect for humanity. It's about changing the very foundations that lead to conflict.
But faced with all that destruction and, the world often not listening, you have to wonder, did she ever doubt the power of words? It seems like an impossible task sometimes.
Oh, definitely. She apparently had a positive horror of silence. She needed to speak out. But yeah, this is where it gets really human, really interesting. She absolutely wrestled with whether words actually worked. Poems like Words Come Back to Life or Leaves Blowing in the Wind, they express this deep frustration, feeling her appeals just fell on deaf ears, words feeling useless as windblown leaves.
Yeah, that sense of shouting into the void.
Exactly. She asks, words, have they no power? Lay siege to the castles of the arrogant. You feel that struggle, but, and this is the crucial part, despite that doubt, that internal conflict, she came to this conviction that it was a duty, the responsibility that survivors owe to those who died, to tell their stories, to not let them be silenced. It became an imperative for her, a sacred duty almost.
Right. She pushed through that despair. And she redefined Hiroshima itself, didn't she? Not just tragedy, but something more, like tough, positive life born from the depths of hell, or an idea that transcends nuclear bombing.
Yes, and maybe most profoundly, the conscience of a world that does not allow nuclear bombs. Her final point wasn't just about remembering the bomb. It was about tackling the causes of war, the preparations for war, dismantling the whole mindset, the structures that create these weapons and conflicts in the first place, asking why, not just mourning what.
So Kurihara Sadako's work, her life, it really forces us to look at war from all angles. The intense personal suffering, yes, but also the collective responsibility that allows it to happen, demanding accountability from everyone involved. It's about seeing the whole, often uncomfortable, truth.
Absolutely. Her life is just this incredible testament, isn't it? That even when faced with utter devastation, immense pressure from society, one single voice, if it's rooted in compassion and clear thinking and truth, it can plant seeds of change that actually last, that cross borders and generations. Her refusal to be silent, her complex honesty, it's a profound lesson in courage.
So think about it. We still live in a world wrestling with conflict, with nuclear shadows, with the echoes of past horrors. Kurihara Sadako's call to not forget isn't just history homework. It feels like an urgent, active thing we need to do now. Her poems, those black eggs she wrote about, were like fragile hopes she carried out of the ashes. So the question for you is, what steps can you take where you are to help those black eggs finally hatch, to help build a world where, as she hoped, children can taste butterflies and the lost smell of plants returns, a world where peace can finally take root.